Welcome to this self-consent video. And this is really the first one that's going to get into some details about what self-consent is, how we can practice it in our lives, and how we're already in tune with some of the signals that tell us what we want and what we don't want. So don't worry, we're going to get into a lot more detail and into a lot more kind of context and more complex situations in the future. But today we're beginning by just settling into what we already know about yes and no in our bodies and in our emotions. So it's a practice of kind of internal sensing, recognizing what's already here and what, when you pay attention to it and sit with experiences and sensations, our bodies are already telling us what the signals are, what the emotions are, what the thoughts are, what we want to do and not do. And the thing is, different people have different senses. So some folks are hugely sensitive and really know, for example, as soon as they need to pee, or as soon as they're hungry, or as soon as they're a little bit tired. They just recognize that sense in their body and they're very attuned to it. And for some people, that means that they go to the loo all the time, and that's not ideal for their lives. Or it might mean that they drink an awful lot. Um, and other people are at the other end of the spectrum. Other people just don't notice when they need to go to the loo until their bladder is completely overfull, or they don't notice emotions or sensations. And whichever end you're at, or if you're in the middle, it's useful to notice that. And it's useful to notice how quickly and you are aware of these signals that your body is giving you, both that you're having an emotion and that you're having a physical sensation, and also what you do in response to them. Do you always respond in a way that is congruent with that desire or that need? Or do you often put off bodily needs or emotions or sitting with them or avoid them? So when you're tuning into your sense of yes and no, you might notice that there's um, that you're somewhere on that spectrum. Either you're very, very sensitive and you're very, very clear on those feelings, or you're really not clear. You just don't have that sense very easily, at least. And there are biological, psychological, and social reasons for this. On a biological level, some of us are just more sensitive to emotion and sensation than others. So some people have a sensory processing issue that makes them way more sensitive to, say, light or touch or bodily sensation. On a psychological level, it depends on the skills that we've been taught and the way that we've been brought up, the way that we've experienced the world. Sometimes it's related to trauma, sometimes it's related to coping skills. So there are lots of reasons psychologically why we might be in one place or another. And then socially too. Some social groups are told that their needs aren't important and they might therefore start to notice them less. Some people are taught that what they want doesn't matter because of their race or their sexuality or their gender. So, in lots of ways, structural oppression and social groupings, family rules, family roles can get in the way of feeling really in tune with what's going on for you, or feeling hyper attuned to it, depending on the socialization that you've received. So, for all of us, biological, psychological, and social factors are going to influence where we are on that sensitivity to our body's signals. And they're going to influence how we respond to them too. The next part of the video is all about this exercise that you can do or not do. You can do it in the form that's right here, or you can do it in the booklet that's attached for this month's session. So, what are we doing? We're looking at the practices of yes and no. We're looking at how they feel in our body, and we're looking at what we respond to when we're feeling yes and no. So I'm going to give you some examples from my life, and I've put them in a slideshow because, that's a little bit easier. So take a look at this. And really, we are talking about what we already know. So you're not looking for information that you don't already have. Um, some of us get to this point where we're telling people, oh, yeah, that sounds fun, while having the internal experience, oh, I don't want to do that. And what we're really looking for is what that sense is of, I do want to do that, or I don't want to do that, that comes before the communication. Because the communication is really important, but that's much further down the line than having that internal sense and recognizing it. So I am someone that feels a visceral no at the idea of running. Um, I feel that in my body. I notice a tension across my shoulders and in my chest. I notice almost an electrified feeling, that kind of buzzy, tension. And when I think of riding a bike, I have this like lightness and joy and excitement and this sort of movement towards this kind of energy in that direction. And so I have, just looking at these two pictures, a really strong sense of, ugh, I don't want to do that. Oh, yes, I wish my bike was working right now so I could go for a bike ride. And so movement might be one area in which you might want to think about what goes on my yes list and what goes on my no list. I have previously swum with jellyfish, and whilst I think they're really beautiful in aquariums where I can look at them through glass, I do not wish to have another experience of being stung. And I think that memory of pain is really strong for me when I think about jellyfish. So when I look at that picture, I have this sense of um, avoid, just a really strong thought, get away and move back. And it's not quite a disgust reaction, but it's like a caution. And when I look at this dog, I just want to snuggle him. And I notice that in my hands and in my arms, and I'm noticing this kind of feeling of openness and like, oh, I could have a cuddle right now. And that feels really lovely to me. So when we're thinking about yes, it's super helpful to notice what's the sensation that's going on. What's the embodied feeling that I'm having? And it's often helpful to start with things that are a really big yes. So if you have trouble noticing your yeses, start with something really big, like that lovely dog that I adore, who definitely is always going to be in my yes category. Um, and my bike, my goodness, my bike. Those things are such big yeses for me. It's really easy for me to feel the sensation and energy in my body. And I imagine you probably have things like that too. So start with those if you have trouble. If you don't have trouble with this, then a smaller yes might be okay too. Like, yes, I'd like to read this book or watch this TV show, or something that's a little bit less intense and embodied. And then we want to add, like, what are the parts of this experience of yes that I can notice? And you might have different ones. You might have different emotions coming up. You might have different sensations depending on the kind of yes that it is. So, a social yes to spending time with a particular person might be really different to yes to having a particular food, or yes to having a particular experience with an animal, or an experience of movement in your body. So, notice that there are differences in your yes, but see what's there, see what sensations you feel, what labels you'd put to them, whether there are kind of thoughts that come up like, oh, I love that puppy, or oh, I wonder how his fur would feel in my fingers right now. And then notice the urges. Like, I do have the urge to snuggle. I do have the urge to stroke and to get close to and interact with. So, really get into what is it that I'm feeling? How am I wanting to move towards this? What's going on for me? So, some more examples. Oh no, the long line at the airport security just makes my whole chest feel tense. And I notice thoughts about what they're going to do to my wheelchair if I go through airport security. And I notice thoughts about, like, how long is it going to take? Is it How early do I need to be there in order to go through this experience? It's just this whole sense of tension from my diaphragm all the way up through my shoulders and my arms. Um, and the label I would put on that is anxious, stress, tense. So it could be low level anger and low level um, fear, I guess, maybe a bit of disgust. On the other hand, the hot tub, I just love being in warm water so I can feel this sense as soon as I bring my mind to it of it's just like calm and a sense of opening up, and my thoughts slow down and my body just feels more relaxed. Especially in the outdoors, looking out at the countryside, it just feels like something that I would really love. Here is where my reaction becomes disgust. So I really despise mushrooms, which you're going to hear about again, I guarantee. But mushrooms are something that I really just do not want to consume ever. And I don't really like them being cooked around me either. I find them, I dislike the texture, I dislike the taste, I dislike basically everything about them, let's be honest. So I noticed that in my mouth. So I noticed this like feeling of like just yeah, yeah. And I have this desire, this urge to kind of push away from that image and to not get near it and to look away from it. I don't even want to look at it. So that no for me is a really disgust related no. And it's very much like, oh, get it away from me. On the other hand, I have an unusual delight for ketchup considering my age. I really like ketchup, and I like to put it on lots of things that other people consider very strange. So that feels, again, lighter. And so the like, yes feeling feels like again, a moving towards rather than moving away from. That's really strong for me there. And finally, um, I do not like beer. Well, actually, I'm allergic to beer. I'm allergic to barley, and it makes my body react in really unpleasant ways, and nobody wants to be around that. And it makes my whole body uncomfortable. So again, I get that feeling of tension and mm, no, it's not as strong as it is for mushrooms, but it's still pretty strong for me. And on the other hand, water, I just love water. I like being in it. I like being in showers, in baths, in lakes, in the sea. I like drinking it. I like it in all its forms. I like it in snow, all its forms. I love water. So with water, I just feel this openness and this hopefulness and this like, why aren't I drinking that right now? And I have a bottle right here. And as soon as I look at this glass, I have that urge to pick it up and drink it. And the thoughts are like, well, um, it's just so lovely and it just feels so nice. So yeah, water is a hell yes for me. So no situations are things like I feel no around pressure to go for work drinks, pressure to engage in interactions, pressure to take care of people that I know or that I'm related to. Um, Invites when I actually really need downtime. I mean, I'm very extroverted in many situations, but I need my downtime too. And so invites that are happening at those times just feel like a no. I really dislike red lights and orange lights, so driving in the dark sucks for me sometimes, but those feel very like a no. Oh, also automated customer service phone calls and phone call bureaucracy. No. And what I encourage you to do when you're looking at your no list is try not to choose things that are too intense. Because if it's a very intense no, particularly one that emotionally dysregulates you or gets you above like a 7 out of 10 when you're thinking about it, it's not going to be very effective to work with. It's going to make you feel too emotional and not really able to engage so effectively in writing stuff down. So when you're thinking about no, try to think about no's that are like between a 4 and a 7 out of 10 in intensity. Um, Sometimes no's that have a disgust reaction, you can go a bit higher because sometimes that's a bit easier for people to cope with. But Be real careful about it because you don't want to end up really dysregulated and not able to engage with the feelings and the sensations and the rest of this exercise. And that's really all about doing the same thing we did with yes. Let's dig into it. What is it that's feeling like a yes? So, what's the sensation that's happening in your body? What's the label that you're putting on that experience for no? So, is the no a disgust no? Is it an angry no? Is it a no because you want to protect your relationship and you know that this is going to bring up resentment? Is it a no that's around sadness or fear or frustration or anger? So, like, sit with what's the emotion here? What label am I going to put on this? And when you're noticing thoughts, think about how am I how are my thoughts helping me to know that this is something I don't want? So, are my thoughts going directly to, well, if I say no, what will happen? If I say no, will somebody be upset? Those kinds of thoughts are super helpful in figuring out what the barriers to enacting your no are. So, definitely make a note of those. And when you come to urges, the urges are just so important because they're telling you how you want to behave, what you want to do. So get those down as well. And all of these come to just a basic understanding of what's happening for you when yes and no is happening. Once you've come to that, it's really helpful to reflect on it. So to reflect on, did I learn anything new in this? Is there anything that I would like to take from it? Is there something that I want to explore more? Are the kinds of no that I didn't realize I was experiencing that I am actually experiencing that I want to dig into a bit more deeply? And you can think about these sensations, feeling, labels, thoughts, and urges again in the future when you're doing other things. But when you're reflecting, just thinking about what you've learned, whether there's any emotion coming up, and what's happening for you. And once you've done all of that, I highly recommend switching tasks to something really diverting. So, this can be a really emotional exercise when you're going through the no part. Some people find that they're so surprised that they're getting these signals, or sad, or a bit overwhelmed, that it's kind of difficult. So, it's really helpful to have something for after you do it that helps you to regulate your emotions and to move on with the rest of your day. So, you don't get stuck ruminating or consistently thinking about this. This is really a 5 to 10 minute exercise, and it's really helpful to stop there. And if you want to come back to it on another day, that's absolutely fine. That's, in fact, very helpful. But doing more than 5 or 10 minutes at a time is just likely to be difficult and keep you in emotions that might be unhelpful with the rest of your life. So, that's the first exercise. I'd really love it if you would do some of this in advance of the session, if you have capacity to do that. And I'm looking forward to seeing you real soon.